Hello brothers and sisters, welcome to another episode where we listen to this confession from our brother, who had to allow himself to be buried at the cemetery all in the name of acquiring power for fame and success. He even reveals other things he had done at the mortuary all for powers. If you are new here, welcome to Dangerous African Confessions HD, where we bring to you confession stories to help you make your own informed decisions about your walk with God and to help you live a purposeful life. Without taking much of your time, let us go and listen to the story. Please subscribe if you haven't done so. Also do like and share this video, and hit the notification bell, so you will be notified anytime we upload new videos.
First of all, I will say that I wasn't born into a family of preachers, but the call to ministry came early. It wasn't long before I realized that preaching alone wasn't enough. People wanted signs, wonders, and miracles. My small congregation looked to me for solutions to their problems, and as the numbers dwindled, so did my confidence. I desperately wanted to prove that God was truly with me, but no matter how hard I prayed, fasted, or sought answers, I felt powerless. My journey that I am about to share with you began the day I met this fellow pastor, who after some time working with him and seeing how I was really being drained for the fact that the ministry wasn't going as I had wanted, decided to give me an advice, which changed my life completely. You see, he had mentioned to me about how he was able to make his ministry stand till that time, and promised to help me, if only I wanted help. And as such, I opened my arms to his help. And that was when he said, he knew of a man who could help me reach the levels of some of the pastors that I admired. You see, my brother, I wrestled with the idea for weeks, but desperation has a way of silencing caution. One evening, I found myself traveling to meet the man, who together, we made a journey to a ritualist known for his work with clergymen. Everybody I later came to know from ministry who had gone to him, called him Baba. My brother, my journey into the world of rituals began the day I met the ritualist. He lived on the outskirts of a remote village, in a compound surrounded by dense forest. As we approached the gate, I felt the weight of what I was about to do sink in, but desperation drowned out any second thoughts. When we knocked on the wooden gate, and moments later, a frail man opened it. Without a word, he gestured for us to follow him into the compound. The house was modest, but the surroundings were anything but ordinary. Strange symbols were carved into the walls, and the place had the smell of incense and herbs. The first thing he said to me when we arrived at his home sent a shiver down my spine. He told me that I must leave my innocence at the door. There is no power without sacrifice. After about some few talks, the man led me into a dimly lit room, leaving my friend pastor outside. The air felt heavy in the room, and the walls were lined with shelves filled with jars containing powders, liquids, and things I couldn't identify. In the center of the room was a mat, surrounded by candles and small clay pots. He motioned for me to sit, and as I did, he stared at me with an intensity that made me uncomfortable. He then asked me of why I was there in the first place. I told him that I needed power for my ministry. Bobo nodded slowly, as if he had heard this request 1,000 times before. He then reminded me of what he told me earlier about leaving my innocence at the door. This is because, he said, I had to know that power comes at a price, and I must be willing to let go of everything I know, everything I hold dear, if I so much desire the power. Honestly, my brother, at that point, I thought about quitting. But then, I thought about my struggling ministry, the empty chairs, the disappointed faces of my congregation. I couldn't bear to go back to that life of insignificance. So, I agreed for him to continue with whatever he was going to do for me. After we were at the same page on this, he then told me that the first step for me was cleansing. This, he said, is because my spirit is cluttered with doubts and weaknesses. We must purge them to make room for power. He then handed me a pouch filled with a fine grey powder and instructed me to mix it with water and drink it every morning for 7 days. The powder, he said, would purify my mind and spirit. My brother, let me tell you, those 7 days were agonizing. The mixture tasted vile, and it left me feeling nauseous and weak. My dreams became vivid and disturbing, visions of shadows chasing me, whispers in languages I didn't understand. But you see, by the 7th day, I felt like I was losing my grip on reality. When I returned to Baba, he seemed pleased. Because he told me that the spirits are beginning to recognize me. So, he handed me a list of items to gather. They were a white goat, a black hen, 7 yards of red cloth, and coins minted in a specific year. Each item, he explained, carried symbolic significance. The white goat represented purity, the black hen symbolized submission, and the red cloth was a bridge between the physical and spiritual realms. So, once I had gathered everything, Baba took me deep into the forest at midnight. The path was narrow and overgrown, and I could barely see where I was stepping. When we finally arrived at the place we were supposed to be, it was plain clearing. It was like, a lot of things have been done there over the years. And so, there was no grass there, as compared to when we were going. So, Baba drew a large circle on the ground with white chalk, filling it with intricate symbols. At the center, he placed the goat and the hen. Baba lit candles and began chanting in a low, rhythmic tone. For about some time, the air began to grow thick, and a strange energy seemed to pulse through the clearing. He handed me a knife and gestured toward the animals. He told me that I must make the offering myself. The truth which must be said is that my hands trembled as I approached the goat. Its eyes met mine, and for a moment, I felt a pang of guilt. But Baba's voice echoed in my mind, "Power comes at a price." I closed my eyes and did as he instructed. So, as the blood soaked into the ground, Baba chanted louder, his voice rising to the end. I felt a strange heat wash over me. When it was over, Baba smiled. He told me that I have taken my first step into the realm of power. After this, I was given some few days to rest. And then it continued. Over the next few weeks, the rituals became more intense. The first one that changed me forever is the one that required me to spend a night in a graveyard, surrounded by burning herbs that filled the air with a choking smoke. Baba explained that this was to strengthen my connection to the spiritual realm. So, the preparations were made, and the dog was made. I remember, I had his 2 servants with me there as well as my friend Pastor. He encouraged me all along to make sure I go through to the end. When the dog was made, the necessary items for the ritual was done and poured into the dog. I was given a drink which was mixture of herbs and other things that I had no idea of. Once I lay down inside the dog, other mixture of the herbs were sprinkled over me and they started to cover the dog till it reached my neck area. In a space of about 15 to 20 minutes, I didn't see anything again. Until dawn broke that I came back to myself. Apparently, I had died and had gone to the other realm to make connections with the dead at the other side of existence. This ritual took place continuously for 3 days. Every night I would go with his servants and repeat the same thing over again. You see, each ritual left me feeling more detached from my old self. Another involved meditating in total darkness for hours, chanting specific incantations he taught me. This became my only prayer I knew, and I also did pray that while in church. So, to your ears, I was speaking in tongues, but deep within me, I knew what I was doing. I began to notice subtle changes. People seemed to listen to me more intently, and my prayers started to have an unusual effect. But Baba reminded me that these were just the beginnings. He told me that true power lies beyond the veil of death, and I must conquer death itself to reach my full potential. That happened to be the last ritual that I did. This final ritual was the mortuary ritual. He explained that it was the ultimate test of my resolve. He told me and made sure I understood that the dead hold secrets of the spirit realm, and to command power, I must confront death in its rawest form and assert my dominance over it. My brother, this ritual would require me to visit a mortuary at midnight, perform specific incantations, and defile the bodies. Baba handed me a pouch filled with powders and a list of chants to recite. I was made to understand that anything is possible with this ritual. Either I can lose my sanity, lose my life, or come out victorious. So, I knew that this was the point of no return. The day of the final ritual arrived, and I felt as if I were being dragged toward an abyss. I couldn't sleep the night before. My mind replayed everything I had done to get to this point, the animals I had sacrificed, the nights in the graveyard, the choking smoke of the rituals. Each act had something taken away at my soul, leaving me hollow and numb. But this ritual, the one Baba called the ultimate test, filled me with a dread I couldn't shake. You see, I arrived at the mortuary just before midnight, clutching the pouch Baba had given me. Every necessary arrangement had been made with the securities and the man in charge of the cold room, as they call it. The building was cold and silent, its grey walls illuminated by the faint glow of a flickering streetlight. My heart raced as I approached the door, each step heavier than the last. Inside, the air was stale, carrying the unmistakable scent of death. Rows of metal drawers lined the walls, each containing a body. The mortician, who had been paid handsomely to leave the premises for the night, had left the main chamber unlocked. And he told me too about the new ones that had been brought in. I felt like an intruder in a place where the living had no business. I set the pouch on a nearby table and opened it. Inside were several items, a powder to sprinkle on the bodies, a small black candle, and a piece of paper with the chants I was to recite. Baba had been explicit in his instructions. The ritual had to be performed in silence, save for the incantations. No hesitation, no distractions. I lit the candle and placed it on the floor. Then, I began to chant, my voice trembling as I recited the unfamiliar words. The sound seemed to amplified by the oppressive silence of the room. Baba had told me to choose one of the bodies, and I hesitated as I approached the bodies and went to a specific one that the mortician had marked for me. My hand shook as I touched the lifeless form of a young woman. Her face was pale, her eyes closed as if in peaceful slumber. I couldn't bring myself to look at her for too long. I sprinkled the powder over her body and continued chanting. Each word felt like a weight pressing down on my chest, suffocating me. As I reached the climax of the incantation, I was supposed to commit the act Baba had described. My legs felt like lead, my body frozen in place. Every instinct in me screamed to stop, to leave, to run as far away as I could. But honestly, brother, I then thought of everything I had sacrificed to get to this point. The night spent in terror, the animals I had taken, the purity I had surrendered, all of it would be for nothing if I failed now. I forced myself to move, every step feeling like a betrayal of the person I once was. What happened next is something I struggle to describe even now. It was as if my spirit left my body, watching in horror as I carried out the ritual. The act was grotesque, dehumanizing, and utterly devoid of anything resembling decency. I felt nothing but a cold emptiness, a void that swallowed every thought and emotion. When it was over, I collapsed to the floor, trembling. The candle had burned low, I whispered the final incantation, barely able to speak, and the ritual was complete. As I gathered my things and left the mortuary, I felt a strange energy flow through me. It was as if a door had been opened within me, releasing a power I couldn't fully comprehend. Baba had promised that this ritual would grant me dominion over death, and in that moment, I believed him. You see, when I returned to Baba, he greeted me with a knowing smile. He said that I had done well, and I was no longer the man I was. He revealed that I was now a vessel of power, a conduit for the spiritual realm. And I must say that he was right. In the months that followed, my ministry transformed. My prayers brought instant results, my prophecies were accurate, and people began noticing and flocking to my church. My name spread far and wide, and my congregation grew beyond anything I had ever imagined. I must say that everything you are looking for in the dark, you will surely find it. But the cost of whatever it is that will be given to you, will be something even bigger what was given to you. That is exactly what happened to me, my brother. You see, the cost of that power was far greater than I anticipated. At night, I was haunted by the faces of the dead, their lifeless eyes staring at me in silent accusation. I felt their presence everywhere I went, a constant reminder of the price I had paid. I should say too that the success of my ministry brought no peace. Instead, it deepened the void within me. I had gained the world but lost my soul in the process. And now, as I look back on the path I chose, I realize that true power doesn't come from rituals or sacrifices. To tell you the truth, at first, the power I gained from the rituals was intoxicating. People revered me, my church grew beyond my wildest dreams, and I felt like I had finally become the man of God I had always aspired to be. But beneath the surface, things began to unravel, just like I pointed out just now. It started with subtle changes in my body. I noticed that my manhood didn't respond the way it used to. At first, I thought it was stress. After all, leading a fast-growing ministry came with immense pressure. But the truth is that, as the days turned into weeks, the issue persisted. No matter how much I tried to ignore it, it was clear that something was wrong. The problem wasn't just physical. There was a spiritual heaviness that seemed to weigh me down, particularly in moments of intimacy with my wife. It felt as though a part of me had been severed, leaving me hollow and disconnected. So, in a nutshell, I started avoiding my wife, making excuses to explain my distance. Deep down, I knew this was the price of the ritual, though Baba had never warned me about this particular consequence. You see, when the negative results of dark powers are coming at you, they come in folds. I must say that the physical ailment was only the beginning. Soon, the spiritual repercussions of what I had done began to manifest in ways I couldn't have imagined. It started with the nightmares. Every night, I would see her, the young woman from the mortuary. In my dreams, she stood at the foot of my bed, her lifeless eyes fixed on me. Her face was pale, her lips bloodless, but her expression was anything but passive. It was filled with anger, sorrow, and accusation. Although she didn't speak, but her presence was louder than words. I would wake up drenched in sweat, my heart pounding, only to feel her lingering presence in the room. The dreams soon spilled into my waking life. That was when I began to hear whispers when I was alone, faint but unmistakable. At first, I dismissed them as tricks of the mind, but they grew louder, more insistent. One night, as I sat alone in my study, the lights flickered, and the air grew cold. The room felt heavy, as if the walls were closing in. I heard her voice for the first time, not a whisper, but a piercing scream that echoed in my ears. It was a scream of pain, of betrayal, and it left me paralyzed with fear. My manhood, already failing, seemed to worsen with each encounter. The spiritual torment I endured seemed to seep into my physical being, draining me of vitality. I visited doctors, but they found nothing wrong. My wife grew suspicious, accusing me of hiding something, but my brother, how could I explain the truth? How was I going to tell her that the man she married had slept with a lifeless body? You see, the final one came one night when I woke up unable to breathe. It felt as though a heavy weight was pressing on my chest, and when I opened my eyes, I saw her, sitting on top of me, her cold, lifeless hands wrapped around my throat. It wasn't something physical. It was as though I was asleep and same time not yet asleep. Her eyes burned with rage, and I could feel her hatred like a physical force. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. I struggled, flailing my arms, but it was as if I were trapped in a nightmare I couldn't escape. Just when I thought I would suffocate, my wife tapped me. She asked what was wrong with me. But then, I couldn't tell her what I was facing. After that night, I knew I couldn't go on like this. The power I had gained meant nothing if it came at the cost of my sanity, my health, and my soul. You see, I reached out to Baba, desperate for answers. And when I told him about the hauntings and the state of my manhood, he simply shrugged and shocked me with his answer to me. He told me that I only came for and asked for power, and never cared to ask for the price too. So, he told me that this was the price I had to pay for the powers given me. That day, I became more lost than ever. The rituals had given me everything I thought I wanted, but they had taken even more in return. I was a shell of the man I once was, tormented by guilt, haunted by the dead, and disconnected from the very life I had sought to elevate. The attacks continued, and with each one, I felt myself slipping further into despair. The woman's ghost seemed relentless, her presence a constant reminder of what I had done. My manhood, once a symbol of my strength and identity, became a source of shame and self-loathing. I tried everything, finding solution with my friend became futile. Then I met a man who was able to work on me together with the same Baba to let the ghost stop coming to me. But for my manhood, as I talk to you now, it can't function again. No one knows the exact reason why my wife filed for divorce. Because even though she did not know the exact reason, she promised me she would never talk about it with anyone. So, that is how I lost myself as a man and my wife in the quest of searching for power from the dark spirits. In the end, I didn't gain anything aside the notion amongst people that I can prophesy. And to this, I lost every important piece of myself. I will say that, if you are someone out there looking to take on the mantle as a leader, pastor, or any field you find yourself, never ascribe to any dark power. Because, at the end of the day, whatever promise you will be given, the consequences will be greater than that. I leave you with this caution. Thank you.
Don't forget to please subscribe, share and like our videos. Kindly hit the notification bell so you will be the first to get notification to our videos when we upload. This story reminds us that true power comes from God alone, and it's never worth trading your soul for temporary success or influence. There are many voices in the world that promise power, wealth, and fame, but they often come with a hidden price, one that can cost you your peace, your purpose, and your very soul. Never allow yourself to be blinded by the allure of worldly success. Seek truth over popularity, humility over pride, and authenticity over the illusion of perfection. The light of the Holy Spirit is always available, and no matter how far you've gone or how deep you've fallen, redemption is possible. It may be hard, it may take time, but when you turn toward the truth, you'll find peace and freedom that surpasses any worldly power. And to those who follow leaders or pastors, remember that no one is above God. Keep your eyes fixed on Him, not on any person. Stay grounded in truth, be humble in your journey, and let the light of the Holy Spirit guide your steps. All I will say again is that, stay grounded, stay prayerful, and stay vigilant. Never let anyone, no matter their title or position, control your path, your choices, or your spirit. Thank you for watching, and remember, life is too short to make choices you regret forever. We shall meet again in the next video.